Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, we got a lot of juicy news and notes to go over when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs over the last week or so, so you're going to want to stick around for this one. So I guess to start this off, we need to go back to last Monday night against the Arizona Coyotes. Not that anybody wants to, but we need to have a larger conversation about this game and what the Maple Leafs showed in it. Right before the end of the first period, Nick Ritchie scores a goal, and when that happened, it gave me a little bit of heartburn, but seeing that they haven't even updated his headshot yet on NHL.com is starting to bring that back. Did you know that Nick Ritchie has 13 goals and 18 points in 28 games since being traded to the Arizona Coyotes? They played that guy with Matthews and Marner last year. They also played him with Tavares and Marner to start the year when Matthews was hurt. Nothing worked. They tried everything. But enough about Nick Ritchie, because Christian Fischer scores midway through the second to make it 2-0, and then the Maple Leafs were booed off of the ice to end the second period. And because we've seen this movie from this team a number of times over the last couple of years, where they're playing a team that they should just walk all over, but for whatever reason, they find themselves either tied or losing going into the third period, but then they start to try harder or play better, whichever way you want to frame it. They usually end up either tying the game and sending it to overtime or just flat out winning. I ran over to my FanDuel account and I threw $40 in, and I bet $20 on the Maple Leafs to come back and win this game at the start of the third period, and then I doubled down midway through when it was still 2-0 Arizona, and I cashed it out immediately as soon as they tied the game. I'm stupid, but I'm not that stupid. And it's a good thing that I did cash out, because a couple of minutes later, the Maple Leafs take a penalty, and Justin Holl sends a pizza pie pass right up the middle of the ice, and the Coyotes end up scoring. And isn't that just the perfect way to describe Justin Holl, right? In the previous game, he scores the game-winning goal against the Senators, but in the next game, he's involved on a terrible giveaway on the penalty kill that leads to the Coyotes' game-winning goal. This guy is either absolute money or the worst player on the team. There's no in between. And then a really weird play happens, where Morgan Rielly goes to glove the puck down. Clayton Keller kind of gets his stick into his glove, but the puck falls, hits off of Clayton Keller's skate, and then kind of stays in between them for a little while. And then Mitch Marner goes to pick it up, flips it towards the net, and Alex Kerfoot scores. And the Maple Leafs think that they've tied the game 3-3 with under a minute to go. And then this is where it's sort of weird, because I don't know if the Coyotes challenged that goal or if something happens in the final minute, it just automatically goes to the Situation Room, because the Situation Room reviewed that play and deemed that it was a hand pass from Morgan Rielly to Mitch Marner. And I'd like to read this part of the rule. Or has allowed his team to gain an advantage, and subsequently possession and control of the puck is obtained by the player of the offending team either directly or deflected off any player or official. By the definition of the rule, I think they got the call right. But if you watch the play in real time, not super blown up and in super slow-mo, I think that there's enough there that that goal could have been inconclusive. And because the call on the ice was a good goal, um, I think it could have held. But then Sheldon Keefe comes out post-game and says, the difference between us and Arizona is that we have elite players, and our elite players didn't play like elite players. But then Sheldon Keefe and the core group of players have a bit of a meeting, and then he comes out in the media the very next day and says he used some of the wrong words, and Mitch Marner was asked about the comments, and he said, we understand, we're grown men. And then Sheldon Keefe added to it by saying yesterday's massaging of the elite players comment had more to do with managing the Toronto media than anything. And I mean, that's fair. You don't want to give them more ammunition than what they already have to work with. This is already a very tough market to play in. And both things can be true, right? You'll want to keep things in the room and handle them internally. But also, his comments were very fair. I showed this on my channel last year when it was initially said, and I want to get everyone's opinion on this on the comment section, but let's kind of talk it out first. Bob McKenzie on Overdrive mentioning that he heard that Leafs management was apparently grilling the core players about losing to bad teams, and the core players pushed back within reason. And the prevailing thing that came from it was that the core players said that they'll take care of business when they need to. Because it was frustrating. The Maple Leafs last season would go through stretches where they would lose to teams like Buffalo and Montreal and even Arizona, but then they would go ahead and beat teams like Carolina, Boston, Florida, Tampa Bay in complete full 60-minute efforts, and they looked absolutely dominant doing it. And then again, to start this season, they come out kind of flat in the season opener, but it's the first game. There's a lot of new players on the team. It's going to take some time for those guys to mesh into the system and for them to gain some chemistry playing together. I get that. I'm willing to let it slide. It's just the first game of the season. But this game against the Coyotes really reminded me of how I felt when I first read this quote. But it's this maddening, repeating pattern of not showing up for the first 2 periods of the game and then storming back in the final 5 or 10 minutes to either tie, make it a close game, or win it that is driving people absolutely insane. And I would never suggest that the team is deliberately losing or tanking games. That's just ridiculous. But at the same time, if you do it so often and it becomes a pattern against all of the usual suspects, you're going to leave room for interpretation, and that could be messy. What I'm trying to say is don't act shocked, don't be surprised when your character or work ethic gets called into question, because this isn't coming from me. This is coming from management, the people that are supposed to be more patient, smarter than all of us combined. And you know what? Sometimes maybe they're not, but at the same time, it's good to know that we have some things in common here. There is frustration that is shared between both Leafs management and fans. Because that's been a real problem with this management group over the last couple of years, is that fans have a hard time relating to them because some of the moves and the decisions that they make are very cold and calculated. But hey, that's their job. But this is where you can kind of start sliding down a slippery slope, right? The season is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're not going to be able to show up for all 82 games. So if you're the Maple Leafs and you're looking at a game against the Arizona Coyotes and you're looking at who they got on their team, if you can get away with only playing 5 or 10 minutes and still squeaking on a win, if you can win based on skill alone, good for you. But you're going to drive people insane. In that whole quote about taking care of business, yeah, they didn't win in the first round against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But last year, the Maple Leafs were playing at a 110-point pace against other playoff teams, which was the best in the entire NHL last season. And I need to know what everyone's thoughts and opinions are on what we've just talked about for the last couple of minutes, because there's going to be a second game against the Arizona Coyotes this year. There's going to be more games against teams who are looking to be in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, and the Maple Leafs are probably going to turn in a similar effort at some point. It's not the fact that they lost to the Coyotes, it's the way that they lost to the Coyotes that matters here. There's a very, very clear pattern. I don't think that this is an issue with management or the coaching staff. I wouldn't go as far as to say that Sheldon Keefe is lost to the room, but they've already fired one coach. It's not revolutionary to say just work hard or just try or just put in effort. Management will be held accountable at the end of this season if the team is unsuccessful. Kyle Dubas does not have a contract beyond this year, but the players also need to be held accountable as well. Lost in that absolute mess of a game that they made us experience, Jake Muzzin was injured. He left the game with a neck injury. He was placed on IR, which means that he's going to be out for a minimum of 7 days. But the conversation surrounding the injury has been very interesting. Because Jake Muzzin did suffer 2 concussions relatively back-to-back last year, and there was some real doubt on whether or not he was going to come back and play for the Maple Leafs at all last season. And then Mitch Marner had this to say on Jake Muzzin after his most recent injury. Obviously, for him, it's just making sure that if he does come back and play this year or whatever happens, just make sure that he's going to be able to do whatever he wants to do the rest of his life and enjoy the time with his family and his kids. And Mitch Marner added that Jake Muzzin is probably his closest friend on the team. And because Mitch and Jake are so close, maybe we can infer that he knows something that we don't. But at the same time, I think this is just Mitch being candid about the situation. It's scary to see anyone get hurt like that. But if I'm being honest, I haven't been able to enjoy watching Jake Muzzin play hockey the last year at all. His frustrating play aside, because he has struggled with things on the ice the last couple of years, it's just the concussions. It's a scary thing. Every time he got hit or threw a hit in the playoffs and he fell down, I was worried that he wasn't going to get back up again. So what happens with this, I don't know. We're going to have to follow as we go. And with Jake Muzzin out of the lineup, that meant that Victor Mete drew into the lineup, and he played on that third pair with Mark Giordano, and we'll get to him in a minute or so, because the main story of yesterday's game between the Maple Leafs and the Dallas Stars was Nick Robertson drawing into the lineup on that second line with John Tavares and William Nylander, playing in a game against his brother. If we're looking at the scoring opportunities from yesterday's game, overall, the Maple Leafs did outchance the Dallas Stars. But it very much did not start that way. They started very flat in the first period, and it looked like they were going to get booed off the ice again. But the Maple Leafs came out flying in that second period, and they were outworking the Dallas Stars, and the Stars didn't even have a shot on goal for almost 9.5 minutes in that period, and that was followed by a big shot block by Austin Matthews, who's made a point this year to play more physical, to be more involved in the play in his own zone, and it showed so far. Did anybody have Austin Matthews being top 10 in the NHL for forwards and hits on their bingo card through the first 2 weeks of the season? I don't think anybody expected that. But like I said in the previous video, Austin, I like that you're doing it. Maybe the attitude can be infectious. Maybe it can be inspiring. But please don't get hurt doing this sort of stuff because we need you to score. Speaking of scoring, it was Alex Kerfoot that picked up his first goal of the season, but then the next two were Nick Robertson, and it's the way that he scored those goals that just made it absolute chicken soup for the soul. On the first goal, he gets hit along the boards, but then goes directly towards the net and gets rewarded on a point-blank opportunity. And then on the goal in overtime, he's the only player back on a 2-on-1, but he cuts to the side, strips the puck off of Jamie Benn, I believe, and then is able to skate back up the ice. He defers to Austin Matthews, who gives it right back to him, and he wires it past Scott Wedgwood to win the game. We talked about this at the beginning of the season, but Nick Robertson did absolutely everything he needed to do to make this team out of training camp, but if you look at his $796,000 cap hit and the fact that he doesn't require waivers, and then if you look at Malgin's $750,000 cap hit and the fact that he does require waivers, and then the Maple Leafs were cap compliant with Malgin by only $4, you can understand why it had nothing to do with his actual play as to why he was left off the roster to start the year. And if we're looking at the Maple Leafs lines from practice today, Nick Robertson is right back where he was to start yesterday's game, alongside Tavares and Nylander. It was just a maintenance day for Austin Matthews, and that's why Denis Malgin is the placeholder up on that top line. But another interesting thing with this lineup is that Wayne Simmonds is drawn in for Nick Aube-Kubel. And that's because the Maple Leafs' next game is against the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg, and the last time the Leafs were in Winnipeg, Rasmus Sandin had his knee taken out and Jason Spezza got suspended. It was a very physical game, and I guess they're expecting tomorrow's game to be one as well, and that's why Simmonds draws in. And this also happened the last time they were in Winnipeg. This quote from Mark Scheifele: "Hey boys, is there anything better than beating the Leafs?" And the answer to that question is yes, Mark. There are a lot of better things than beating the Toronto Maple Leafs in the regular season. Nobody even reacted to it in the dressing room was the funniest thing. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. As always, make sure to let me know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comment section below. Make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. I'm sorry that I didn't get to the stuff from the Arizona game earlier on in the week. I've just been sick for the last little while, but I've been feeling better the last couple of days. I'm sure you could still kind of hear it in my voice, but I'm going to get out of here, guys. I'll see you in the next one.